Hey everyone, hope you've been staying safe so far. Welcome to another Legends of Runeterra deck guide. Today we're going to be looking at a different take on dragon decks that some people in the community have talked about and have been interested in. We're going to be looking at a Shyvana Dragon deck featuring Freljord instead of Targon, more specifically Shyvana and Trundle. So as usual, I'll be going over the deck in detail first, and then we'll jump into some gameplay afterwards. Before we do, if you guys like this type of Legends of Runeterra content and you want to see more, let me know. Hit the like button and leave a comment below. So I will say right off the bat that I do think there is a Targon dragon list out there that will actually be the best dragon deck, mainly because Targon has access to not only the most playable dragons, but the most dragons, period. This deck is alright. It performed decently well for me, given that I played this the first 2 days in ranked after the ladder reset for the new season. So naturally you're facing higher elo opponents from last season that are placed in lower ranks this season. And at the time, almost no one on NA was in Masters yet, and only a few were in Diamond when I tested this deck. That said, this is more of a fun deck for me at this point. But I wanted to get some type of content out to you guys since the new expansion released, and I figured why not share what I was messing with last week. I still want to go over the cards in here and why I chose each one so you have a better understanding of some of the nuances behind Freljord if you do decide to pick this deck up. So let's jump in. All right, first off, Omen Hawk, solid 1-drop. Makes the next 2 units you draw bigger, and even +1/+1 stats can be extremely relevant in a deck like this that cares about board control. And Demacia and Freljord probably care about the board more than any other region when you build a mid-range deck with either, or in this case, both. Dragon Guard Lieutenant. 3/2s have started to become more relevant in the past meta or two, and I feel like now they're more important than ever against other meta decks. There isn't a lot of removal that deals 2 base damage right now. In fact, decks aren't running a lot of removal, period. But anyway, this getting Challenger means you get a lot of board control early on against any deck. So this is a very important card in this deck. Egghead Researcher. So I'm playing this over Avaros and Sentry because I very quickly realized how few dragons this deck has access to that you actually want to play since we're not running Targon, which has the vast majority of good dragons. Demacia only has 1, really, sometimes 2 in the case of Shyvana. So Egghead Researcher is even more important than Dragon Guard Lieutenant because you need this ability to generate dragon cards for you. Next we have Single Combat. If you're playing any dragon deck with Demacia, you basically need strike cards. I personally think every dragon deck should be running both Single Combat and Concerted Strike before even considering any other strike cards like Strafing Strike, but I've seen lists that do otherwise. Core card in practically any Demacia deck at this point. This helps your naturally big units to remove opposing threats. All right, so Troll Chant. Troll Chant was actually the last card I added to this list. I haven't been as impressed with it as I thought I was going to be, honestly. But I think it's still important to have in this deck, mainly because you can pop spell shields with this, and your unit will still get the +2 health bonus, since the bonus is actually a requirement to play the spell, something that Spell Shield won't negate in this specific case. And next we have Avaros and Trapper. Absolutely insane 3-drop for this deck. I was running Laurent Protege at first, and I have not been impressed with him in this meta. Granted, I do still think early Challenger units are important. Even though this deck is focused on dragons, I will say that Frostbite decks aren't the only Freljord mid-range decks that this card is good in. Having access to 1 mana 5/5 Yetis is just amazing. They're great targets for Augur of the Old Ones. They make Cythria better. They make Judgment better. And you just get even more quality units to use Single Combat and Concerted Strike with. All right, so Kindly Tavern Keeper. This is basically just anti-aggro, which is why I'm only running 2. At 3 copies, there were times I'd draw this very early when I didn't want to. It's great against aggro decks like Pirates and Discard, and okay against everything else. Healing your unit hasn't been as valuable as I thought it'd be, but there are corner cases in slower matchups where it's a lot more important to heal your unit than your Nexus, and 3/3s for 3 are just so good in this game. Now we get to the first champion, in this list, Shyvana. Shyvana's okay. She's not great. I don't think she's quite as bad as other people have said. She's a decent 4-drop. That's a dragon. And she'll be the main way you activate Dragon Guard Lieutenant in this deck since, again, Demacia has very few playable dragons, and Freljord doesn't have any. I will say that I also agree that she does need some type of buff, although I don't think it needs to be a major one. Her level 2 is pretty strong in this deck with the extra strafing strikes she gives you to use as long as you have the mana for it. Next we have Concerted Strike. This is the other extremely important card for any Demacia midrange deck, but especially for one running dragons. I didn't mention this earlier when I talked about single combat, but the reason strike cards are so good in this deck with dragons is that they have good synergy with the Fury keyword that dragons have. So you get to potentially remove a threat and buff your dragon for getting the kill at the same time. Pretty much every dragon in the game now has high power stats as well. So Concerted Strike can potentially kill huge threats if you choose 2 dragons to strike with. I've seen other dragon lists that don't run any Concerted Strike, and I personally think that's incorrect. This card is extremely important, especially against Soraka and Tahm Kench, if you can catch them without additional Targon protection in hand. That said, I am only running 2, because I don't want to see this card until after I have 2 decently sized units on the board, which is somewhere between round 6 and 10 usually. You will rarely play this card in the early game, but I have needed to use this to kill early units coming out of aggro decks, using the only unit I have in play. So don't be afraid to use this early against aggro if this is in your hand, and it's better than playing any other unit you have. Next we have Screeching Dragon. We're playing this because it's really the only playable dragon that Demacia has access to. I'd say this card most of the time is a better dragon than Shyvana is in her current state, especially if you're not in a position to level her up anytime soon. Screeching Dragon is your main target for Augur of the Old Ones, since you can then use this card to pick off other units and buff its stats while it remains healthy, a weakness that normally comes with Fury. Trundle, solid champion, definitely the better champion of the 2 we're running, but he also costs more for this deck to run. Anytime you decide to run Trundle in the mid-range deck, even though he makes 8 mana Ice Pillars, you still have to choose what other 8 mana cards you're going to run to make his Behold ability at level 2 more consistent. That and we're running Augur of the Old Ones for a very specific reason, which we'll get to when we talk about it next. He just costs more card slots to play than something like Sejuani, a champion I might still try, but I feel like Sejuani, at least for this deck, is little more than a thing with beefy stats and doesn't really contribute to dragons in a significant way. She doesn't have a lot of synergy in this deck. You can kind of make the same argument with Trundle, but Ice Pillar is granting something vulnerable every turn, which is very good in this meta, and the regeneration has been pretty amazing. All right, next we have Augur of the Old Ones. I can finally say, after so many people said how amazing this card was when it first got spoiled a few months ago, I have found a home for it in this deck. Augur does something very specific and important for us. Dragons have a tendency to be unable to finish games because they don't have a way of pushing the huge damage they do after being buffed through to the Nexus. So Augur is here to grant overwhelm to our dragons and other big units so we can finish games. This has amazing synergy with Screeching Dragon, any Yeti tokens, and any dragons we get from Avarosan Trapper and Egghead Researcher, as well as Cythria and Cadragrin, both of whom we'll get to in a bit. Augur makes Cythria in particular much harder to block when you're planning big attack turns with her. I'm only running 2 because you don't always have a good target in play for this, so you don't always want to draw this by round 6, unlike Cythria. Next we have Cythria the Bold. With Genevieve Elmhart getting nerfed, and with the way the meta is shaping up right now, I think Cythria is actually mandatory if you're doing any mid-range Demacia deck that isn't Scouts. She might be better than Genevieve even there now, who knows. Decks like Soraka, Tahm Kench, and even Targon Lee Sin to an extent are very bad against fearsome units. Lee Sin often can't block them early on, and even later in the game, they usually have to invest additional gems or spells to block multiple fearsome units at the same time. Soraka TK pretty much can't block them at all. Cytheria basically gives us an army of fearsome units to take advantage of that. And if you give her Overwhelm with Augur, she's a nightmare to deal with, since often the way you deal with Cytheria, if you can't kill her, is to just chump block her with a weak unit you have to save damage. I run the full 3 copies of these for all those reasons. All right, next we have the Howling Abyss. I couldn't stop going on about how broken this landmark was, so I figured it was time to put my money where my mouth is and just throw it in this deck just to see how good it really was. While it's not OP status in this deck, it has been pretty good. You won't outgrind something like Aurelion Sol or even Karma, but this lets you outgrind other similar mid-range decks. I've had games where this card single-handedly won me the game, and you will see one of those games once we get to the gameplay in this video. This card is definitely underplayed right now because people are turned off by the RNG when they shouldn't be. Next we have Judgment. This is one of the additional cards I decided to run for Trundle, and more importantly, Augur of the Old Ones. Judgment is pretty straightforward. It just does what it does. It removes entire boards when you can catch people off guard with it. Otherwise, it's pretty underwhelming, which is why I'm only running 1 copy. There really weren't any other 8-mana cards I wanted to run over Judgment, though. Tiana is probably the only other consideration, but then I feel like I'd have to run at least 2 copies of her, and the deck list is pretty tight at this point. And finally, we have Cadragrin the Infernal. This is once again another case of Demacia lacking playable dragons, so we're almost forced to play a copy of this card because our second region is Freljord. Cadragrin's main purpose is to be a dragon for Dragon Guard Lieutenant and to activate Augur of the Old Ones and Trundle after he levels up. I will say outside of that, he's decent, even in this deck. Mainly because we run Egghead Researcher, and Cadragrin will buff those dragons even if we haven't played Egghead Researcher yet. So he's kind of a 4th copy of Cytheria. I do fully acknowledge that Brightsteel Formation would be a better card, but that card isn't a dragon, and Cadragrin is, so he gets the spot. All right, the Mulligans, they're pretty straightforward for this deck. You generally want any 1, 2, or 3 mana units, regardless of the matchup, although I will give a few caveats. You really want Dragon Guard Lieutenant more than anything else if you have a dragon in hand already. By extension, you want to look for Shyvana as well. Even though she's not amazing, I basically keep her in my opening hand against almost every deck, just in case I draw Lieutenant. You want Kindly Tavern Keeper against aggro only, but I've kept Tavern Keeper before if I don't have Avaros and Trapper in hand, since it's better than drawing a 5 or 6 drop early on. Keeping Cytheria against Soraka Tahm Kench can be greedy, as important as she is for that matchup. I'd basically only keep her if you already have an early curve, and even then, you're still going to need to sneak her in after the Tahm Kench player swallows a unit. You pretty much always prioritize keeping units over spells with this deck. Single combat would be the only spell I keep, only if I already have some of my early units in hand. Otherwise, I'm throwing it back to look for those early units. But that's it for this deck guide. I've got some games for you all to check out, so enjoy the rest of the video. Again, these games were in ranked and played almost immediately after the new season started and the ranks reset. So these games were against players that were roughly in diamond rank last season. If you want to keep up with the content I'm doing, consider subscribing to the channel, and feel free to follow me on Twitter, and most importantly, follow me on Twitch because I'm looking to get back into streaming pretty soon. The links to those are in the video description box below. Also, thanks for taking time out of your day to check this guide out, and I'll see you all next time. I'm going to keep Cytheria, it's too important in this matchup. God, my issue isn't even with Lee Sin, it's just with Targon, period.
less we fear.
There's actually least index that are fair. The reason they're fair is because they don't play Targon. But everyone complains about Lee Sin. The trap is set. I'll play this. This kind of blocks Soraka too.
I'm still good to scrap.
These stories were true.
I don't want to play Lieutenant here.
Should have stayed home, pal.
Buenos.
Let's play another Trapper.
I'm not afraid. Just a wee bit blind.
Oh, she flipped? I mean, Jesus, dude. This deck, bro. I need to get aggressive.
No more of your crap soup, lassie, please.
It's that soap? You've been drinking this? I'm through waiting.
I'm just gonna aggro him down. Try to. It's like, nope, I'm gonna make you use stuff.
A win streak. No more of your crap soup, lassie, please.
It's that soap? You've been drinking this?
Alright, what could they play here? Tahm Kench, Soraka. They can't really protect Tahm Kench.
I'll find it.
Oh, they're still running that card. Okay. I want to wait till they attack here. I know they will. If they want their Star Springs to get it activated.
Ooh, you wee scruff.
They walked around.
Show them what we're made of.
What did we catch? Never again will we fall to dragon fire. Hot on the trail. There is assistant!
Skilp, you're behind.
You pay first.
That's why I swung with this. I was like, there's a chance you can't block this either.
Never again will we fall to dragon fire.
Prepare for battle.
I am here to help.
Took the bait.
Be at peace.
Tread carefully.
Yeah, Soraka's gonna be a problem.
Is it the mustache? Who knows?
You leave me no choice.
Ha! This is fun, yes?
Take heart. These jewels are more than mere trinkets.
It is easy, see?
Sithra the best play though.
What did we catch?
Hmm.
Dragon blood, Demacian heart.
Healing up. I'm just gonna hope they don't have
They are nothing.
good.
For life.
Late Star Spring. Gonna play Howling Abyss. Super grind them out. I'm at 16. There's nothing they can actually do to like.
Own fate. Every step, a new journey.
Let's show our friends the door.
Stars fall.
Have you met my shield?
Take heart.
Here comes the divergent paths. Or not.
Live with purpose. Show them what we're made of.
Do this. Sithra is a stronger play. Oh, okay. I guess, bud.
Nothing stands in our way.
Help is on the way. Time to celebrate!
There are none like me.
I fight another day.
Guess we're both gonna be at 4.
My starlight, take heart.
We wear red to honor the fallen.
The journey is difficult. These will protect you. Fortune favors the bold.
I think we can win here.
Fire knows its own. Jinx stands for Jinx. Durr.
I think we can win. Man. I have no way of dumping my hand. It's done this guy. Can I win? That's just what it comes down to. Can I win? I think I can.
Smile! It's called gunplay. You spurn my gift?
Can I go to 1 here?
Embers and smoke. Less thinking, more pew-pewing.
Yeah, they actually have to give up the Ember Maiden. That's the crazy part. Okay.
Live with purpose.
I heal and draw. No cascade. So now MF dies. He's back alive.
How can Braum help? Dragons, such fascinating creatures. The age of dragons is begun. Oh dear.
To heal and protect.
Truly, a grand sight to behold.
These gems
Jeez,
grant
dude.
Awera harmony. Take heart.
Okay. He needs a way to kill MF. Yeah, he needs a way to kill MF. If he can't kill MF, then
Remember my
we win.
words.
First we fight.
We didn't need to kill
We should be friends. All must end. Look to the skies.
should be GG.
These jewels are more than mere trinkets.
Especially since this isn't doing anything now.
Sapphire, gem of our divine patron.
Ah, damn it. Come on. Fine.
It is easy, see?
party? Looking for trouble? It found you.
Yeah, eat it, dude. Taste it.
Go no further.
Help is underway.
Less thinking, more pew-pewing. You are better than this.
You don't. Okay.
Stand behind Braum.
Still exactly 0.
Go no further.